So honestly, I'm not going to start this video with some elaborate hook or intro because I just want to get this video over with, because filming these videos honestly is bad for my blood pressure. Because the posts that you're about to see are so delusional that it honestly makes me lose any and all hope or faith for the future of the United States of America. Now, full disclaimer, just like in all the other videos like this one, I am not trying to paint Americans or America in a bad light. I'm simply here to spread awareness to the underlying issue that underpins all of America's other issues, which is the delusion. America has an issue with delusion. I want the best for America, but clearly, as you're about to see, a lot of Americans don't even want the best for themselves, let alone their fellow Americans. That said, this first post right here is from Bingan, who, if you didn't get the chance to watch the last edition of this series, we discovered is the pinnacle of human evolution and intelligence. And in another display of his academic prowess, his intellectual bandwidth, he says, "I worked at NATO on a long-term project in Germany during the summer. When it got unbearably hot, they told us to wear fewer clothes. You can brag about universal healthcare all you want, but if you have zero AC, I'm not interested. You can't gaslight me, I sweated through it." So again, I can already feel my blood pressure rising. So here's the thing about this. Okay, first of all, he complains that they gave him a logical solution for his problem. Notice I said his problem because, as you're about to see, this seems like a problem that's very specific to him. They said, hey, if you're hot, maybe wear fewer clothes. Maybe don't put on that extra layer. Maybe wear shorts instead of pants. And clearly, he got offended. But again, just like in the last episode, his profile picture is in black and white, so what he's saying must be true. It has to be official. There's no other way. Oh, and he has the verified check mark, so we know without a shadow of a doubt that he's legit. You see, here's the thing. Germans, I found, are very practical people, just like the Dutch people. I have a lot of experience with Dutch people. I've heard that Germans are very similar. They are solution-oriented people. They don't think in terms of problems, they think in terms of solutions. Here's the thing. For starters, there really isn't an issue with not having AC in Germany because, as you can see right here, and look, it's August the 1st as I film this. It's August 1st, so we are dead in the middle of summer right now. You can see there is nothing about the temperatures in Germany that warrant air conditioning. And if you're an American viewer and you're accustomed to Fahrenheit like me, I don't really know what any of this means, if I'm being honest. If we switch it to Fahrenheit, you can see we're talking a high of 69 or a high of 75 for the whole entire week. The lows are in the mid 50s. And for the rest of the world, you can see the low is in the mid-teens or even below the teens. We have a low of 12 for the week. Why would you need air conditioning with these kinds of temperatures? I need air conditioning because I'm here in Thailand. Thailand is hot. Granted, I'm pretty sure there are people here who don't have air conditioning. They survive, so you should be able to survive in Germany without air conditioning, especially with temperatures like this. All you need to do is open the window. I know, and look, I know the windows in Europe are a little different. Maybe they're a little too complex for you to handle. I don't know. But what I do know is that, hey, if you prioritize air conditioning over universal healthcare, then power to you. You stay over there. You stay as far away as you can possibly get, because I have a sneaking suspicion that people in Germany probably don't want you there, or anyone who thinks the same way you do. Next post. America has the worst city planning and transportation facilities despite being the richest country on earth. This is true. This is very true. Now, of course, I found out over the past few months that America is not really the richest country on earth. America is kind of like a corporation that balloons its revenue numbers, but the net profit is actually very low. What I mean by that is you have a few people who are making an obscene amount of money, people like Trump, and then you have other people, the commoners, or I guess in this day and age, the peasants, who are not doing so well at all and are actually worse off than your average European. And I'm saying this to say that that's all smoke and mirrors. The idea of being the richest country on earth, it's simply not true. But it's the self-proclaimed richest country on earth. So why is it that America doesn't have good city planning and public transit? Well, we know that's because of lobbying, but this person right here doesn't see the issue at all. They don't see an issue at all. It has the worst only in your meaningless mind. Americans are far more comfortable with their AC cars going to work than South Americans walking up hills. So I don't even know why this person brought up South America at all. I don't really know the context behind this. But if I'm not mistaken, they have cars in South America too. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I haven't been there, but I'm in Thailand. They for sure have cars here. So I'm going to take a wild guess that they also have cars in South America. Now here's the thing. In terms of being comfortable with their air-conditioned cars, I don't know about you, but this right here, this scene doesn't seem that comfortable to me. That's just me personally. I don't know. I've driven in LA traffic before. Far too many times. I've driven in New York traffic. I've driven in traffic across the whole entire country because I took a road trip with my girlfriend a couple months ago across the whole country. And look, while I'm grateful that we had access to a car, there were many times where I wished that we had alternate transit options. And I was very grateful during the times that we actually did because I got to avoid all of this. If you're comfortable in this, then hey, again, power to you, but please stay far, far away from me. Next post. How it feels coming home to 5G, air conditioning, ice, and drive-thrus after spending 6 weeks in Europe. So this right here is definitely rage bait, but let's just take it at face value and assume this person is being serious because there are people out there who actually believe that America is better than Europe because it has these things. But here's the thing. Europe does too. Europe has these things as well. I don't know where he got the idea that Europe doesn't have 5G or air conditioning. And again, to the air conditioning point, this is just Germany, but I think this is a pretty good representation of what a lot of at least Northern and Western Europe looks like temperature-wise in the summer. It's cool, it's rainy, cloudy. It's not really going to be hot, but I digress. Ice, drive-thrus. So here's the thing about this post right here. Again, blood pressure rising. If you're watching this video, the person who made this post, if you're watching this video, I have a gift for you specifically. I want you to actually email me what your PO box is so I can send this to you. This right here is my glasses case. Inside is my pair of glasses, and I want you to have them. I think you could get much more use out of them than me, because if you were in Europe for 6 weeks and you didn't see any of those things, then clearly you would benefit much more from using these, from having these, than I ever will. Because I don't understand how, for the life of me, how you were able to spend 6 weeks in Europe and not see any of those things. I mean, drive-thrus, they definitely have those. They most certainly have those. Definitely seen McDonald's drive-thrus in the Netherlands before. They have those. So I don't know if maybe he just stayed in his Airbnb the whole entire time or what. I just know I need a drink of water because, again, blood pressure. On to the next post. If you are homeless in the US out of all countries, it's a skill issue. Let me reread this just in case I misread it somehow. If you are homeless in the US out of all countries, it's a skill issue. So what I'm seeing here, because look, again, I've been to Europe. In fact, I've lived in Europe for over a year, and I've definitely traveled throughout the US, and I saw many more homeless people in the US than I ever saw in Europe. Actually, and I'm going to talk more about this in an upcoming video, but I saw more homeless people in the US than I've seen here in Thailand, which is definitely saying something. But if that's the case, if homelessness is indicative of a skill issue, what that tells me is that Americans are simply not as skilled as Europeans, or people from Thailand for that matter. That's my takeaway. If what this person is saying is true, then it must also be true that Americans are less skilled. Why are Americans less skilled? Americans are less skilled because the education system is bad. And we see that with people like this, or people like this, or the person who made this post right here. Clearly, the education system needs a complete rehaul, because you have people like this just out and about actually voting for the leaders that are going to determine the future of the US, which is mind-boggling to me. And I say this as somebody, by the way, who used to think like this, believe it or not. I used to think that if you were homeless, if you were poor, it was your fault entirely. And I look back on that version of myself, and honestly, I feel pity. I feel sorry for that version of myself because he didn't understand how the world works. But now I have a much better understanding that, hey, maybe it's a skill issue. For some people, it actually might be a skill issue. Maybe they don't have any value to provide to society, but maybe it's actually because the US does a really shitty job of providing a basic necessity to its citizens, the people who live in the richest country on the planet. I don't know. Next post. There's no demand for public transit in the USA. Car, 11 minutes. Train, 2 hours, 7 minutes. I've definitely seen that many times in my life before. In fact, many times in Dallas, there's literally no public transit route at all to get you to where you want to go. Public transport is a gateway drug to EU-style socialism. No thanks, I'll drive. So, I think honestly, out of all the issues that Americans are delusional about, this one might be the one that gets me the most fired up, because I've seen the other side. I've experienced the other side of what it's like to have cycling infrastructure and public transit and alternative transit options in general, walkability even. And once I experienced that and then went back to the US for 3 months and pretty much had to use a car to get anywhere, I'm not gonna lie, it really rubbed me the wrong way because I realized how unnecessary it is. And it's interesting because let's assume that this person is telling the truth. Let's assume that public transport is a gateway drug to socialism. What is socialism by this person's definition? We're gonna assume, based on what they said and how they said it, that they equate socialism is just a placeholder word basically in this context. Socialism is synonymous with a lack of freedom, or at the very least a perceived lack of freedom. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, freedom is synonymous with having options. And if many times you don't even have the option, then that means you're not free. And if that's the case, then America is the socialist place. And again, I'm not going by the textbook definition of socialism. I'm going based on what Americans think socialism is. And we already know that the EU and the European countries that actually provide these public services are not true socialist countries, but different discussion for a different day. We're talking with people who are incredibly dense, so we have to simplify things for them. America, by their definition, is actually the socialist place because that's the place that doesn't allow for freedom. And ironically, people always talk about EU-style socialism, and yet it was the Netherlands that invented capitalism. Look it up. In fact, I think the Netherlands also invented the stock market, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but just an interesting contrast there. Next post. Universal healthcare in the US would be a death sentence for many. Universal healthcare means socialism has won. So let's just break this down comment by comment, because we have two things to disprove right here. It's a death sentence. So it's interesting because I'm going to assume that this person came to this conclusion on the basis of the situation in Canada and the UK. Everyone knows that Canada and the UK, although they have universal healthcare, aren't necessarily the most efficient healthcare systems that there are. Fair enough. Even I'll admit that. But here's the thing. For all of their inefficiencies, when you look at the life expectancy in Canada, it's 81.65. Interesting. A full 3 years higher than the United States. What about the UK? Same thing. 81.24. Just about 3 years higher. So if that's what a death sentence looks like, if that's what having an inefficient universal healthcare system looks like, then sign me up. Because an efficient healthcare system, once they iron out all the wrinkles and kinks, looks more like this. You have a life expectancy of 83 years in Norway, and Iceland and Finland, I'm going to assume, also have some form of universal healthcare because the lawmakers have common sense. And you can see life expectancy 82.61 in Iceland, 81.69 in Finland. Both higher than the US. It's not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence. Now, what about this other person? Universal healthcare means socialism has won. So again, going by the definition of socialism we've established based on the dense people who are talking about socialism, let's look at this right here. Okay, these are statistics. I didn't make these up. This has nothing to do with my opinion. These are just facts. 20 million people, which is nearly 1 in 12 adults, owe medical debt in the US. In fact, those 20 million people owe at least $220 billion in medical debt. Now, I'm going to save you the time and the trouble of doing the calculation yourself. That's an average of $11,000 for each of those 20 million people. And it's at least $220 billion. So it's probably even higher than that. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, having a whole bunch of debt does not equate to freedom, especially if it's not debt that will prove to be beneficial in the long run. Like, let's say, for example, business debt or a mortgage. This is medical debt. This is debt that you are taking on for the sake of survival. And what I have to wonder is how many people turn down medical care to avoid this right here. Interesting. I don't have a statistic for that, but it's something to think about. Because to me, if people are doing that, then not having universal health care is actually the death sentence.